Hello, welcome to Process Guide. This is another tutorial on Bootstrap. In today's lesson, we will be looking at navbar and carousel. In most of the sites that you visit, you will notice that there's a menu section somewhere on the site. And these menu sections are where you select where you want to go, where you want to get to in the website. So those information actually starts before any other information on the website. The way it's normally arranged is that you have your logo and then your links. Any website you visit, most of the websites you visit have this theme designed that way, where you have your logo, then you have your link. So if we even try YouTube, for example, we could see some similarities where you have your logo and then you can have your link. In this case, we have it like this link. They have it on the left hand side. But the demo we're going to do today is for Microsoft, where we have the link in line with the logo. So we start off with the navbar, and as I've said earlier, we're going to be using Microsoft. In the navbar have several sections, but I will just split it into 3 sections. We have the brand area, where you have the logo of your site. That's denoted as brand. That's the brand of the website, so I mostly call it logo area. And then you have where you have your links, the menu that point you to other part of the page. You have that working right there in the middle, and at the extreme end you have like tools or action button or things to do, like extra button. Sometimes you have search bar there, so that's why I said it's divided into 3. And we are going to be exploring all these options. Let's jump right in and see all the features that we have in the code. We can start off with our requirement, which is the nav keyword or the nav tag. It's not as if it's defined HTML tag, but it's a semantics to use when doing nav. You could actually call it anything, but it's better you just use nav, and it denotes navigation. It denotes navbar. So you start off with the nav, and this doesn't do anything, so to say. There's nothing working yet. You move on to the next thing, where you specify the class. As you've noticed, anything Bootstrap most of the time is by using classes. We use classes to denote what we want to do. This is no exception. So we go ahead and start providing the class that we need. The first class you need to put in your mind is the navbar class. The navbar class is required before you can do any other thing. The next class you need to specify is navbar expand. Navbar expand. And this navbar expand allows you to tell the navbar how it should position itself based on the screen. You guys know that we've been talking about screen, SM, LG, MD, XXL, and what have you. So this also works like that. You can use the navbar to denote that what I'm looking at, I want the navigational bar to appear when it is in large screen. Let me give you an example what I'm talking about. So if you look at the Microsoft website, as you minimize at this stage, you notice that the menu disappears. So this should be tablet mode, this should be MD. So at the point it's getting to large, it's making the menu visible. That's exactly what it is this one is doing. So for the testing now, we can say large. So what you've denoted here now is that you've set the navbar expand to large, meaning as at large it will maintain this link you have here, this position that you have here. That's what you've been able to do on this section, is to put your content of your navigation of your menu inside the container. And the reason that is so is, if you notice in the menu system here, notice the Microsoft is within a specific space, and we could pull this off with a container. Let's do that and put the next thing we have should be a container. So So this container creates a sizable ratio. You know, we have container MD, LG, XXL as well. Now that our container is defined, we can then start adding content to our navbar. The first content we are seeing here is the logo, which I said is the brand. So it's denoted by the brand. So how do you put that in? You create, most of the time it's used by anchor. Use an anchor to add your brand in. So I can call this my logo, and the class is what is important, because you need to tell Bootstrap that this is the brand we're working with, and there's a class for that. That class is navbar-brand. So automatically Bootstrap already now knows that the brand should sit in right here. So since we are designing Microsoft's homepage, let's just put in the logo right there. I have the logo downloaded already. I will just have the logo right here. So I could just pull this off by specifying the source of the logo. Up next, let's reduce the image. I think quantity should be fine. Now we can then put in our text here. Or let's add our links, the links that with Microsoft Teams, Windows, Office, all these links that we have here. Let's now add it on top. And the way to do that is to put them in a container, and the container must have this class, and that class is titled navbar, navbar-nav. So that's what is going to happen there. That's what you're trying to declare, that within this container, all the link or all the links you want to create, it's a navbar-nav. So this is the way it's written. You can then go ahead and start introducing your links one after the other. But the links also needs to have a name, or rather a class name, but we'll get to those class name later. But let me first just put Microsoft. You can see that these are just normal links. It's not looking nice. You need to add a class for the navbar so that it will make more meaning. So these is just ordinary links, and they are not carrying any style at all, because we don't want to style them ourselves. We want Bootstrap to style them for us. So we need to put Bootstrap styling surface. Okay, so what style do we need to add to this? The style is called, it's easy to remember, it's called navlink. So let's review all the styles we've added so far. First thing is the navbar and the navbar extend. Second thing is the navbar brand. Third one is the navbar-nav, just to tell you that the links are going to be inside navbar. And lastly, the one we just introduced now is nav link. It's looking cool right now. So these are our links created. Our menu, the brand is also there, but you will notice that the links are on the left hand side. So you need to watch what I'm doing very well, because it's very important. Any new item you place inside the navbar will create a kind of section or segment. Notice what happened to the first two items I added. The brand went to the left hand side, and what happened to the nav link, it went to the right hand side. So we still have other things we want to add, like all this link or all this icon. Even though we'll just put a placeholder for them, they are something that you guys will go and work on later as a form of assignment. So let me go ahead and create a new allocation for it, just for you to see what's going on. So if I come here and I try to create something, let's say hello. So you can see what's happening. The three elements I've created have centered themselves. So we have the Microsoft, we have the links, we have hello here, which is supposed to be other menu. So other menu will sit right there. So you can have your icon, you know, that you have here. You can have your search bar, you can have other profiles, so you can have them sitting right there. Okay, so having said that, we need to move on to the next thing. And the next thing here is how to implement this. How to implement this option, whereby you can have your menu minimized and you can have access to the list of the menu within these nice effects. How do you do that? Again, Bootstrap got you covered. It can do that. Ordinarily, for now, it won't show because you've not enabled the feature. You need to enable this feature before it will be able to show. You can see now it's just trying to be responsive and respecting itself. So we need to implement it. How do we implement it? Pretty easy. First of all, we have to bring that button. So you see the button that they use here in Microsoft. You have to create your own, you know, button. There's something like that for you. So you have to create something like this, so that based on that thing that you click, that will make those options show. And that can be by using button. So this one has quite a lot of parameters. Yeah, so I'll try to explain it so that you understand what's going on. First thing is going to be a button. It's going to be a button. So because it's a button that you're going to use to control what is going on. And where you place the button is also very important. So we want the button to appear before the brand, before the logo, just the way it was on Microsoft's homepage. So we're going to put the button to be the first thing to show up here. And let's continue with the requirements of the button. One of the requirements to the class is the fact that we want to make it a button that toggles. It's called navbar-toggle. Navbar-toggle. So it's also a class from Bootstrap. So you have it, navbar-toggler. The next thing you need to specify of the button is now other parameters, which are driven by JavaScript, and that's why you need to have that JavaScript, you know, added here. We talked about JavaScript the first time we were talking about Bootstrap. So this part is JavaScript driven. You have to bring in the JavaScript. We did that in our first video. So if you have that JavaScript link, just add it here. You could also see it on Bootstrap homepage when you try and download. So you just put the script here. That's what will enable this section to work. So let's go ahead and specify other parameter. The type of button. The type of button is just a button. You know, you have two type of button. You have submit button and normal regular button like this. The next thing that follows is some JavaScript stuffs. So it's called data, that's BS for Bootstrap, then toggle. So what should happen when, you know, the toggle Bootstrap is called? You want it to collapse. So this is the default state. This is what will happen when you call, when that JavaScript is triggered. It would call this collapse function. So this can also be done by writing JavaScript. Well, since we've not gotten to the JavaScript section, we will just maintain using attributes to specify the action of what should happen to the page. The next thing we want to specify is also the target. What will be the target of the section that should be opened when we click on this button? Which part of the page should open? Because if you do this, just notice what's going on here. If you do this, this side that is visible to us is a section. So we need to also make that available. We need to create a kind of section within our code that once we click that, make this portion show. We'll get to that section in a bit. So let's say we have our data.ps, then we want to specify the target. So we want to specify which target should be visible. You can come up with any name because it's going to be the name, and that name must be unique. That name must be unique so that it's not something that can be taken by any other elements on your page. So the link, the name you put here must be unique in the entire page. So let's do something like my nav. So do my nav. So we're almost done. The next thing we need to add inside your nav is to put a span and create an icon, and that icon is supposed to be something that is visually that the user can see so that they will know what to click or to show them that you want them to click. You can have a customized icon, but we're just going to use the one that comes with Bootstrap. And to call the one that comes with Bootstrap, you just do span inside there, and in the class you specify navbar-toggler-icon. So that carries the default icon from Bootstrap. What we've been able to do here is to create the button, but it's not going to do anything yet. But just to show that our button is working, we have our button visible that way. But we've not been able to program it to do anything for us. That's why it's not doing anything. We're not writing JavaScript, we just want to tell it what to do. It's already wired to understand what we will tell it. Notice what we did here. We told it to target my nav. So how do you target this section? How do you create something like that will target this section? And notice where we want to wrap or where we want to collapse is this section, this menu. This menu should disappear once our nav icon shows. This section should go away. So how do you do that? Is by wrapping this element inside my nav that will specify here as an ID. So we'll create a div, like a parent element, so that every other ones here can sit inside, and we can then specify some group of classes that will tell Bootstrap what to do when you click on that button. So one thing you need to specify here is that it should be collapsed, irrespective or once the size becomes manageable. So immediately we specify collapse, you can see that the menu disappears, but of course it's going to come back based on the settings that we have. So we have collapse. The next thing we have is to tell it that is based on a navbar. It's a navbar collapse, because there are various forms of collapse in Bootstrap which we've not talked about. When you get to other parts of Bootstrap, you will see other forms of collapsing features. So we have that specified there, that is a navbar collapse, and then immediately you can see that it has changed the effect that it had before. The next thing, the final thing, is to specify the ID. An ID in HTML is used to uniquely identify any element on the page. Notice what's going on here. This part is the target. So the ID needs to carry the name of the target, and that's how you tie both of them together. That's how you tie this section and this section together. The target is this, my ID, and the element name here is called my ID. So this should work literally. Let's give it a try. So as we go to MD, it looks like this, and then we can try it, and it's showing our menu. This is working just like we want it to work. Okay, let's move on to the next thing that we have. Let me check some other settings and see what happens. I don't like the way this one is hanging just here. I can do something about it, and that has to do with the container. So let's see container.large and see what happens. So this is looking much better. So this is better. So this is the effect that we have now. You can add colors to the background. We could do warning. You all know the color available already. We could do something like this. We could do info. So we have several colors that you guys can try out. Border to the bottom. Go ahead and do the next thing that we have here, and that is carousel, the name of the component that is responsible for this item that is moving here. So it's called carousel, and it's kind of a little bit tricky to work with, but of course we are going to talk about it and add the same thing here on the site. Let's get down to it and see how we can implement it using Bootstrap. First of all, I already have my image downloaded already. The next thing is for us to locate where we need to insert this in the system. So I'm gonna pull this one down. I already have my nav completed here. Then I can have it inside a container, which is fluid, or I can have, let's have it inside our container. Let's go ahead and prepare our container. This is our carousel. It's a slideshow component for cycling through elements, in this case images or slide of text. So how does it work? So Bootstrap has quite a lot of features in terms of what it supports as far as carousel is concerned. JavaScript powers it in the backend, but we're not going to be doing any of the JavaScript. Everything we're going to be doing is just pure HTML, and it doesn't require you to know JavaScript before you can implement this. We'll be using images that we've already downloaded, and it also have inbuilt feature for your next and previous, and also autoplay, and you'll see how we're going to implement all that now. So let's start with the div. And the div require you to have an ID because you're going to be using the ID in JavaScript. Even though you're not writing JavaScript now, it needs it to function. So let's call it my slider. And the next thing is to specify some couple of class names which are required. Slider is one of the class names we're going to put here, and the next class is carousel. Now that that has been defined, this serves as a container for the entire thing that will be happening. So the main part of the body, which contains where the slider is going to be scrolling through, and also you need another section which is the where you're going to be clicking to move next or to move previous. So to start the definition of the slider, you have a class called carousel-inner. So that carousel-inner is supposed to be where the slider will be listed. That will be where you list all the slider. Here is where you have the list of the sliders. All the sliders are going to be here, because the slider is complex. It can allow you to put an image, and also you can have text within it. As you can see, that of Microsoft, it has text in it. Within the carousel-inner, you can then have carousel-item. Each of the slide will then be carousel-item. So let's go ahead and do our carousel-item there. The carousel-item can now capture an image, but because this is the first one we are looking at, so we can make it active. This active is very important. Before anything can work, you need to make sure that there's at least one active carousel item. By default, I will have to specify this one as being active. Then we can go ahead and start introducing our image. Time to bring in the image from Microsoft. So I have this one displaying here. We've defined the first item. What I want to specify there is to put some bunch of classes that will make it in line, because the image looks stretched. I need to make it fit. I need to add some classes, and those classes are not really necessarily related to the carousel. It's just to work with my image better. So I can say the width should be 100% of what is happening here. These are helper class that we've talked about. I can also specify that the display should be block. The next thing is to duplicate what we have. Everything we have in carousel-item, we can duplicate it, but we will not make the next one active. That should be not active, so that what you show first is the one that we specify that is active. So we can go ahead and specify the second image and do the same thing and specify the third image. So we have 3 images there, and that's what we've done is the ability for us to bring in the image into the system. But how do we move to the next slide? We have to be able to specify those buttons. Even though Bootstrap button is not on the bottom for now, it's on the top, but you can always dynamically put it on the bottom through programming. But for now, let's implement what Bootstrap has, and then we'll show you other options. This section here is where you have all the slides arranged. The next part is outside those sections where you can specify the buttons. So you start with the previous buttons first, then you go to the next button. So we have 2 buttons, previous and next. So let's start with the first button. So we'll have it this way, and the type is button. The class, which is always one of the most important thing, because the class is what defines the way it's going to look. If you've noticed a lot, the class is what defines how it's going to look. So we can specify that this item we're working with now, you have 2 options. This item can either be the previous or the next. So let's make this one the previous, and then the one that follows will be the next. So we'll specify this one that is the previous, and we have other things we need to specify. How does this button know what is controlling? Is by this ID that we'll specify here. So there's a parameter that we need to specify here that will target what is going on, and that's called our ds data.bs.target. We saw this in our menu in our navbar. So we'll be able to do, what are we targeting? We're targeting my slider. Don't forget there's going to be an hash sign, and the reason why that hash sign is there is because it's an ID, and this is how we target ID when we're using CSS. So next part we need to also specify is what method is going to happen, what action is it going to take when we click it, and that is under data.bs slide. So what's going to happen? It's going to go to previous. So that being said, the next thing is for us to have a kind of visual icon that will show, because right now there's no icon that's shown. Even though we can see that the previous is working, but we need to have the button that will show to give the user an idea that they can actually click here for something to happen. If you go to the right hand side, you can see that the right hand side is not working because we've not gone ahead to create the right section for it. But I will just hold on the right section. Let's finish the previous section because I want the button to show. So where the button will show is inside. We just come inside here. The same thing we did with the nav, that we made the button to show in the nav. This also have its own requirements to make that happen. So we have span, and the class that we have there that will trigger that effect is called carousel control prev icon. We have that showing. You can see the picture here, even though you can see that it's showing our previous link. So we can have that shown in our next. We can then do that for next now by duplicating everything we have here and copying it in the next page. However, we will change anything that is called previous to next. So now that we have that display, you can then see that our previous button or our previous is working, same to our next. Bootstrap allows you to do more than this. This is the basic form of your carousel. You can have it automated, which is what we'll be doing soon. But before then, I noticed that this needs to be stretched more. So let's go ahead and look at our container and let's do XL. So when we did XL, you can see that it stretched it for us more. That's the power of the container there. We use it to extend what we're currently looking at to accommodate that extra space. Okay, next up is how to make our carousel, auto play, just like they have in Microsoft. Is by specifying an attribute under the parent element that is handling the whole thing, which is where you have your slider and carousel. You have an attribute called data-bootstrap, that's BS, then ride. Then when you have that, you can then specify carousel. So if you do this, I'm just gonna leave it so that you can see it at work. So you can see that it's moving based on the fact that we just specify this section here. The next thing I want to show you is how to specify which number you are. Just like in this case, you notice that it's showing us that when the first one and then you're in the second one. Bootstrap also comes with that kind of a feature, so you can specify where you are on the slide, because what if you have like 20 slides or 5 slides? You want to be able to tell the user or let the user know where they are in the slide. So how do we implement this? It's called carousel-indicator, and that can be added almost immediately you start the slider, which is under here. So you can add an indicator here, and you will see where it will be. It will be placed on the bottom of the slider. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have our class, and the class name will be called, that's the parent. This class now is the parent element that will be housing the indicators. So we now call it carousel indicators. So then within that class, you can then specify the buttons, because it's going to look like a button that you could see. So let's go ahead and specify the buttons. So the type is button, then the target, very important. The target is the ID, because the reason why you are having all these targets is obviously the fact that you can have more than one carousel on the same page. So how does the system know which one that you are talking about? So you need to specify the target of which of the carousel you are talking, you are trying to control or you are trying to work with. The next thing is now specifying the position that you are inside. Which number is this one? Of course, you have like 3 carousel here. Your starting number is from 0. So the parameter that counts the number is called data bs slider. So So this is what counts where you are, and your counting starts from 0. Then you then specify the class. The default class is active for the first item. The first item should be active, or the ones that you are activating at the moment, because it's possible that maybe it's the 20th or the 16th slide you want to be active. So you have to specify there that okay, it's the 16th ones you're talking about. We have 3 slides, so you have to create 3 of these targets. There have to be 3. So we have 1 already, we have 2, we have 3. Then we change the numbering here to 1, to 2, and they won't be active by default until the state of the slider gets to that point. So immediately you do this, notice some white button on the bottom of your slider. You can see the white background there that denotes the current active state of the slider. For us is to capture the content of what goes in on the banner. So let's see how we do that. We also have, I think that's the last component we have of our sleeves, and that is called carousel-caption. That section there allows you to put any text within there. You can see by default it's white and it's showing immediately above the indicator, so which is obviously different from what we have in Microsoft. But let's go ahead and start typing what we have. We will make adjustments as we move on. So I have this text here. We have Microsoft for H1, so we can let that be in our H1. Then we have a paragraph for the text that follows. Okay, so we have our text spanning that long. We can just cut it so that we can have something that's manageable. Okay, so now this is when we now start adding our own styling to make it fit our own requirements. We still have buttons on the bottom, and let's just add that. So button can be added by doing, we're going to use anchor. We are not sending it anywhere. We'll say for one person. We can add button by saying BTN, which is short form for button. Then what kind of button do we want it to be? We want it to be primary, so the color should be in that form, primary. That's what that button is there. So we have that button right there. We can play with our rounded edges to be 0, to have that sharp look. Let's go ahead and write the next text that we have there. That's saying for 6 people, and I can put the icon right after that. So this time around the class is going to be also a button, but this time around it's going to be button link. Okay, let's just go ahead and focus on the styling of the text. We'll get back to this later. We want to change the font to black, the color in the black, and suppose we already know how to do this. Text we do dark, and we'll have all that done that way. The next thing is we want to make the text start from the left hand side, because this is center on the text, and that can be done by using text.start _start, and then we have that way. Unfortunately, we can't control this any further. We might need to use a little hack, which is, we might need to push it a little bit to come around this side, and that's by moving it by adding our style. This is just a hack. So instead of writing our style there, we will just use header section to create a quick style. This is the first time we are having to have a style in here. So we'll call it left 10%. So this is what I'm calling it, left 10%. So I can say left 10%. So I want it to start from 10% as opposed to what it is now, because this is too much. I want it to be, let's say, relatively around this position. So let's go ahead and give it our new class that we just created, and that will be added here. So immediately we did that, you can see that is properly aligned. So that's solved for that. Next thing we can do is to manage the bottom section, which you can see is two-way close to the bottom, and we can use our margin bottom to do that. If we do 5, it will push it a little bit down, and you can also push it more by using padding as well. If you use PB5, it will increase that section. So we've added padding and margin to push this, down further based on what we want to see. So you can implement this, to the other section. So you can design this, by yourself. Let's see if our site is responsive enough. So let's move this around and see what we have. Oops. So you can see that is not right. So we need to do something about our text within our banner. So let's see what Microsoft did in their own case. So if you try to move around this section, notice what they did. They just wrap the image, or rather they wrap the text on the bottom, and that looks okay. Let's see what we can get away with on our own platform. If we have it this way, you need to tell Bootstrap that it should not make it visible when it gets to small device. So this is small device. So notice this section here. We want to hide all this section when we are in small device. How do you do that? We already discussed that before. First of all is to say don't show on any of the devices. That's what the D none talks about. So how do you make it show on the device you want alone? So you say you should start showing from the MD block. So immediately you increase it, that's when it will show. So it shows on block, which is fine. That's what we want it to do. So if it goes back to MD, it should just go off because you want to implement something different in your block. So how do you implement a new thing entirely? Is by coming here and repeating the same thing you have here, but in this case you will now make sure that this section that we're copying and paste only shows for small. So you will then do, it should not show but show only on what? In small. Then remember you need to stop it from showing on MD, that's on this one. Then go ahead and do MD none, so that if it increases, this will not show. Now that we have this here repeated, you then need to style what you want to see, how you want to see this one go. So I can just remove everything I added before to see how it will display without me doing anything. So I can remove all the features I added before. These were all the features I added before, and I added color and the start. So if I remove this carousel-caption, I think it will present itself at the bottom here. Then maybe you don't want to do your break that you've broken here, and you're left with something that looks like what Microsoft have. So you could do something like a break, a line break, like so. So it's looking something like that. So if I refresh this page now, we have something like this, so which is a little bit similar to what we have here on Microsoft page. So you can see the transition. So we want to maintain on SM as well, so this needs to also show on SM. Need to make it show on SM, so by default it should actually be blocked by default. However, when it's getting to MD, it should be none. So let's see. That is it. So this method is better, so that when it gets to this section, it becomes this case. So whenever it gets to MD, it stays none continuously, irrespective of how it increases. So you see this in our previous video. I'm sure you guys will be able to complete the website. It's pretty easy. You guys can actually go through the site and complete it. It's fairly easy to design. As you can see, nothing sophisticated, just some bunch of cards and then grid display item. So it's very easy to wrap yourself, to find your way around the Microsoft website. Now what we've introduced was just ability for you to do this section, and you can see it's looking pretty neat. This is your assignment, guys. Go and design the Microsoft website. I want to see you guys do this. I want to see you guys do this grid system, this carousel. This should be fun to do. This one over here, I want to see you guys do this. And bonus points, let me bring in these icons in here. So quickly, let me do that. So to bring in the icons, we will need to bring in the CSS. There's what we call Bootstrap icon. Bootstrap actually have icons, very important. There's Bootstrap icons, so you can get it on the Bootstrap website. It's icons.bootstrap. So the icons are there. There's quite a lot of icons on the site, a lot of icons, and you could do search. You can search for icon and you get the name out. So if you search for search, you have icon. So this is the way we'll be bringing in icon into the platform. So quickly, you could download the file here, so that you can reference it in your project and you don't need to be online to do it. But because I'm online, I'll just pick the file here. This is the file here. I'll just copy it and I can put it in my href section, head section, and this is the location. You can see what is happening here. Is going to get the file. The current version I'm using is 1.10.5, and that is a CSS file that downloads all the fonts that is needed. So now that I've been able to connect the reference the fonts inside my project, I can then use it directly in anywhere I want to use it. Currently, I want to use it where we have this other menu. So the question now is, how do you bring in fonts? There are so many methods, but the one that you can use based on the method that I just selected is this one here, which requires you using an I tag, that's an italics tag, and then you can specify the class. This class here is the name of the icon. We're going to specify a bunch of icons, then you can style it or color it, but we won't be doing any of this. We'll not be coloring all this. We'll just be leaving it the way it is. You can add color directly based on the class. We already know how to add colors. You're going to see us working on it. So immediately we do that, so you can see alarm clock just showing right in there. So let's look at what Microsoft has, so that we'll go and look at the way we can bring it in. So we have 2 or 3 icons we want to bring in quickly. So let's say the first one is search. So on search, we have the search icon, and the name is just search. So when you do search there, when you type search there and you go to preview your results, you can see your search icon is sitting there waiting for you. So you can go ahead and add other icons. By the way, it's supposed to be inside an anchor. so that if you want to make it, link to another page, you could actually do that. So it's supposed to look something like this. Then we can have other ones. So here is a cat. Let's have our cat there. So if you just search for cat, you can see so many icons that you could use for cats. So you have different types. So this is going to change the way you think about the web now. You don't need to be downloading pictures or icons for any of our projects anymore. You just use Bootstrap icon. The next thing we have our cat sitting there. The next thing we can do is, let's say, user. So let's bring in the user guy. Let's type user. And we have something like this. This is called personal circle. So we can type personal circle there, personal circle. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.